Hey, all right. So we're doing some photography here. I want you to think about this though. Think about the majority of your photos, like everything. I'm not talking about those really good ones, those five that you have like just the right place, the right time, beautiful sunset on vacation. Oh yeah, and you could frame that and hang on your wall. Those are awesome, and I'm glad you got those. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about all your photography. Think about your camera roll. It's probably a bunch of selfie garbage. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying your selfies are garbage. I'm saying, or the subject matter. I'm saying the photographic skills you use for taking those probably not so great. And that's okay. We got to learn about this as we learned from the pretest. We probably need to learn a little bit about photography here. Now, we're going to use photography. I mean, think about it. You're going to use it for the rest of your life. Might as well learn how to take better pictures. Okay, so now here we go. I apologize ahead of time for the majority of the photos in this presentation. Most of them are garbage. Some of them are really good and my personal favorites, but some of these are not so good. Like this one. Hi, how you doing? That's me. I am taking a selfie. Good job. You got it right. Now, when you start adding people, it gets weird. Start making weird faces. We start hearting things. That is the old tech lab, by the way. Really weird. But there is also the selfie, like the worst one ever. And I apologize. Oh my goodness. There it was. Duck face, grossness. Now, this one looks like I'm taking a selfie, but there's both my hands. So I took it a timer. Timers are actually awesome. Timers you can take great photography with. You can line up and frame a beautiful shot and then also be in it. And that's great. This is obviously not an example of that. Look at my face. That's awful. I'm hearting what? What? Yay, ceiling. That doesn't even make sense. It's got a cool, interesting angle to this picture. There was actually something worth hearting behind me, let alone my facial expression. I apologize. Now, we need to stop this. We need to stop this garbage. Let's look at some good photographies. Good photograph. Now, this one. This is one of my favorite. I took this on my first trip to Paris. This is the Louvre. This is where the Mona Lisa is. This is like bucket list stuff. I always wanted to go there. I'm an artist. I'm an art educator, and I got to go there with my wife, the person I care about like the most in this world. And I got to take this picture, and every time I get to teach this, it brings me right back to this moment, like when I got to go to beautiful Paris and see the Louvre. Obviously, this is pretty late at night, so I didn't actually get to go in it this day, but that's okay. I went the next day. But I know I just ranted and raved about gross selfies and your camera roll, but I took one. I took a selfie here. It's technically an ussie, and this is us. And this is what a selfie should be. This is a picture, a moment in time stopped so you can remember it always. And every time I see this, it brings me right back to here. I got to go to one of the places I've always wanted to go with the person that I care about the most. That is what a selfie, that's what photography is about. And I love this. So now we're going to think about taking better pictures, and then we'll come back and look at my pictures, see if I applied some of these, I don't know, rules or lessons that you can do to take better, more dynamic images. Okay? Being a photographer, you need to think about the subject. It's hard, I know. Like this one. Yay, art room. Maybe, but there's no art happening, and the walls aren't painted, and it looks garbage, and Mr. McGuire's throwing up some weird gang sign. This one definitely looks like a picture about Mr. McGuire, and there is some dated technology. Ooh, that was a reference about how old he is, but that's a different story. It's still not making much sense considering Mr. McGuire's hanging out in the art room. That doesn't work. Now, this one's obviously about Mr. McGuire, but besides his face, there is the slight issue of it says Mr. Karibo in the background. You need to think about these things, okay? Now, this is too close. We have these craziness of you've seen this before. It's a grid. Your iPhone does it, your iPad does it, and the idea is it is a grid. I mean, technically it's called rule of thirds. That's what you should remember. And the idea is you put in these four vertices, you put important parts of the picture, the subject, if you will. They don't have to be all filled. You could just use one, but your eye hits a picture and moves around. To create dynamic images, you use the rule of thirds. So this is me. This is the art teacher in the art room with some art projects. And if you apply the rule of thirds to it, you have me in the rule of thirds over here, as well as where the art projects are. This one, who cares? Doesn't really matter. It is creating a dynamic image. Your eye is moving around whether you want it to or not. The other thing that really helps this is diagonal lines, and I'm going to look for it in your photos. I have all these diagonal lines, even the implied ones are the markers. I got this one coming up here. I got this. And where are they all leading you? They're leading you to the subject. And people do this on purpose, especially in advertising. That's what I used to do. It's leading your eye around. They're making you look where you want them to look. And that's what it's about. Got rule of thirds here and diagonal lines, okay? Now, you also have to think about the background. Background. Now, he's got weird antennae. You got to think about these things before you take pictures. A Mr. McGuire kebab. Yeah, he's got a halo, or he's playing with it. I don't know. Now, this is actually a different type of photography called forced perspective. Super fun, and we'll try that a little bit later. But what about rule of thirds here? We have the giant sun before it was painted yellow, and his arm and him. It fits the rule of thirds. It could use some more diagonal lines, but that's a different story. Being a photographer, okay? Like this. This has rule of thirds. It has diagonal lines. Like every line is diagonal. There's no horizontal lines at all. It works. It's got good lighting. You got to think about that. Think about my awful selfie and the ceiling. Got to have good ceiling. Now, could these be applied to a selfie? Let's look at one. Now, obviously realize that it's not going to be perfect, but this is also me holding out my ginormo professional camera. But it's got rule of thirds. We're in the rule of thirds. We have diagonal lines. These, you even have an implied diagonal line of the lights leading you to the subject. Diagonal lines. Now, we got rule of thirds. We got diagonal lines. We got good lighting. We're lit and the background. And it's pretty good for, a selfie and me holding out my ginormal camera. Now, there is one thing that really bothers me here, and it is this grate down here. I could have just cropped this off. I could have also photoshopped it. I've been using Photoshop, forever. So I could have taken some of these cobblestones and put them over here, and you would never, ever know. This is about framing. And if I was taking a picture of two people, I just angle the camera up a little bit, and this would go away. It doesn't distract from the edges of your frame or your picture. But I didn't. I didn't do that on purpose because, think about that. It ruins the authenticity of this picture, of this moment. I'm not going to edit it. I'm not going to ruin it or tarnish this image, this moment in time. It's a selfie. This one is definitely framed correctly, edited, whatever I need to do because I want it. I printed it out and I hung it in my house. But this is a selfie. It's got to be what it's got to be. So what I want you to do is, we'll get to that next. I want you to go out. I want you to take some pictures. Try to apply these things we've learned of diagonal lines, rule of thirds, framing, making sure there's not anything weird going in and out of the picture. Good luck.